Hello, hello. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Put Me On, where it's everything college and corporate. And I have with me today a wonderful, wonderful, let me not spoil it, but I have with me today Feyipitan. Even her name is a story in itself, but I wouldn't spoil it. I'll let her introduce herself. Feyi, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name is Feyipitan. You can call me Feyi, and I am a third year grad student at Illinois State University. I'm going to keep the rest of the story for later.
Okay, so you're keeping the story for later, but let me help them a little bit. You're a third year grad student, but you're doing something phenomenal for others who are looking to pursue graduate studies. Can you share a bit about your journey, your background, as a graduate student, and what you're doing for others who are looking to pursue grad studies?
Okay, sure. So, my journey is kind of a little bit of a long one, but let me try to explain. So, I started off with a bachelor's in psychology. I went to the University of Ghana. Shout out to all the UG people who are listening to this. Once upon a time, when I was a child or a teenager, like many other Nigerian children, I wanted to be a doctor. So, when I was going to undergrad, I didn't get into medicine. So, I think psychology was like the next best option for me. And at first, I wasn't really too sure, but after like my first semester, I actually came to really enjoy the psychology classes. And throughout my undergrad, I really truly enjoyed it. So when I was done with undergrad, I was like, okay, I studied psychology. I guess I will just go do something in psychology. But the truth is, I really did not enjoy it. Like, there's something about counseling that I think is a lot of heavy work that I just couldn't find myself in. And so I had this period where I like to say was existential crisis, where I'm just like, okay, what am I going to do with my life now? And at this time, I was living in Nigeria, and so um I started to look for work, and I had a friend who was telling me like, just try different things, try something new, see what you like, see what you're good at. And so at the time, I got into a fellowship program with something called Innovate for Africa, and through that fellowship program, I realized that I really liked program management. The program was so good. So it was a fellowship program to teach us digital skills or tech skills. So I was actually in the product management track, but somewhere along the way, I was more drawn throughout the fellowship program. It was a 1 month program, to the program aspect of it, like how they put the curriculum together, the design of everything, the flow, the facilitation. And I was a vocal student, and so the people who were the founders of the company at the time kind of knew me. And so at some point in time, we were doing interviews with other startups to get jobs. And I kind of pitched to them that, hey, I think I'd like to be part of this work that you're doing here. And after a couple of conversations, I kind of landed the role working with them. And the thing is, I did start off as a product management fellow, but product management, it just wasn't clicking for me. I was anytime
My heart
they
is
gave me
breaking.
every time that they gave me a task related to community development or talking to the students, I was always more interested in that, always more engaged in that. And so at some point, after a couple of months, my role actually transitioned to working with the programs and curriculum development side of things. And so that was an ed tech company, and I absolutely, absolutely loved it. It was just one of those things where you're just like, I feel like this is me. It was my personality. It was very easy for me to get along with the students. I would often find myself doing things like after school classes for them, just doing extra and so on. So at some point in time, I started thinking about grad school. That was a very different journey. But um, I started thinking about grad school, but I was still doing that job. And then I found this organization called Get In Edu, Get In Education Consulting. Shout out to all my Getting people. So I joined Get In. They had a boot camp to teach people how to apply to grad school. And so I joined that boot camp. And honestly, I like to tell people that I think it was one of those things that set the ball rolling for where I am today, because Getting gave me so much. And then at some point through a series of events, I ended up joining joining Getting as a staff member. I was that good. I'm not gonna brag, but I was such a great student that I ended up joining Getting as a staff member. And so I became a staff member at Getting, which is where I ended up helping over 1,000 students with towards achieving their study abroad goals. And in all of these things, I got a job. So when I was coming to grad school, I then got a job for academic support communities. And honestly, at that point in time, I had come to a realization that what I would describe as my calling or my passion was really truly in education, program management, learning and design. And that has set me off on the path that I'm on today.
It's such a beautiful journey. You
Thank
you
you.
just like a star student everywhere. She's like, I'm gonna come to your
I
boot
try.
camp, but
I
I'll leave
try
with
to
a
be that
job.
girl.
I'll leave with a
Yes,
job. And you're even doing
yes.
that right now for grad school. You're working.
Mhm,
Like that is so exciting. You mentioned something. You mentioned how, during your time at Get In, you've been able to help over 1,000 students.
mhm,
And if I remember my numbers correctly, you've secured over 5 million US dollars in funding for students.
mhm. Yeah, so I will definitely
Take your
give credit.
flowers.
Thank you. I'll definitely give credit to Get In Edu. So first of all, this is not work that I did on my own.
Hmm.
While I was the lead community manager for the Get In bootcamp, this work was a collective effort, right? There were people who were involved in actually getting the word out to the students, those who
Hmm.
were in the registration, and so on and so forth. So I have to give a big shout out to Get In and for the platform and for the team that enabled me to do this work that I consider very important. But just a little bit of a background. I no longer work with Getting, but again, I'm a big fan of the work that Getting does. And Getting is basically an education consulting company that's looking to democratize access to global educational opportunities, especially for students from developing countries. And so I don't even have the numbers accurate, but Getting has helped a lot of students because I know that when I was a student, we were hundreds and hundreds. And then when I became a staff, just in the 2 years that I worked with up to I had about a caseload of about 1,000 students, and this does not include all the other, students that came afterwards, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that was the work that I did. So I was involved in managing the program, the boot camp, and this boot camp was a 3 month program that was focused on teaching students how to fish. And I think that that's what
Hmm.
set that's what made that job really special. It wasn't about doing it for the students, but teaching them how to look for those opportunities for themselves, how to apply for it, and how to secure that kind of funding that actually really truly changes your life. Through the work I get in, I've worked with students who have gotten into Ivy League schools all over the world, all kinds of scholarships. I don't really think that there's any scholarship that getting students have not gotten into. And I think that it is beyond the scholarships and the funding. These are the students that are going to change the face of the world we live in, especially in Africa, because they are going to grad school to find solutions for problems, for real life challenges across different fields in healthcare, in tech, in governance, and so many other things. And so that's what really, really made it special beyond just securing money. But there's something about it again. You learn so that even beyond that grad school application process, you actually can go out into the world and continue to do the work. I mean, I'm a living testimony of that, right? I learned so much that I was able to become a teacher for other people. So, yeah, I love my getting people.
I love the passion that's coming as you're like saying it. Like there's a point you were like, there's no scholarship, nobody from Getting hasn't gotten
Yeah,
into. I was
I
like,
don't
pun
think so.
intended.
And
I
I'm
love
and I'm
it.
being serious.
Love it, love it. And you're just talking about how they prepare students to go look for, these opportunities themselves. And like you've worked with so many students. So I'm sure you've seen different types of problems that students come into the program facing or maybe face during the course of the program. Can you highlight maybe some of the common challenges or actually let me backtrack, maybe some of the common misconceptions around like getting funding or
Mm,
graduate school or even
yeah,
scholarships in general, and
yeah.
maybe how you helped them overcome some of these.
Yeah. I would say I think in my time, even as a student of getting and when I, became a staff member, I think one of the biggest things is just a lack of information. I think that, and that's where Getting is trying to fill the gap, and so many other people who are in that space. But I think a lack of information is the biggest thing, and that's the thing that's one of the things I am most passionate about. If people don't know, then they cannot pursue what they don't know, right? So that would be the biggest thing, and that's what people usually come to me for. I have this question, or I don't know how to go about this process, or I've heard so many conflicting opinions. What is the truth? And
Mm.
so that's one of the biggest things. I think the second thing too will be that a lack of preparation. People don't understand that those who secure scholarships and fundings and things like that, they didn't start today. It's not like it's the day you wake up and you're like, today I want to secure the MasterCard scholarship. That's the day you secure it. You start to secure the MasterCard scholarship years and years ago, when you're doing all of the grassroots work in undergrad,
Mhm.
when you're setting yourself apart, when you're doing research work, when you're volunteering, all of those things, when you have good grades. So that's one thing. And then another thing I would think about is also the imposter syndrome. I think a lot of people have that feeling of, oh, only first class students can get into good schools, or even I had that misconception like, oh, only first class students can get scholarships, especially in the US. For some reason, we were glorifying, going to the US, like, oh,
Mhm.
people who went to the US first class only, but
Oh,
that's a
wow.
huge misconception. And so that gives a lot of people imposter syndrome, because before they even apply, before they even shoot for the opportunity, they are already thinking to themselves that I cannot get into this because of whatever reason. So yeah, I would say those are just some common areas. I don't know if you want me to share some more.
No, no, those are like really good. And I love like how you started off, like the lack of knowledge is like the
Yeah.
greatest barrier. What
If you
you
don't know, you
don't
don't know.
know. Exactly. Like, and that's really why we're having this conversation, because like access starts with awareness, and that's what we believe here at Put Me On. Like, we want you to have like the awareness about all of these opportunities. And I love that you're already doing that. And you're speaking of like, how people need to prepare as they start the process, or even before and during the process. So, can you speak to what that process looks like for those who want to get funding for grad school? What should they start preparing? What are some things that they need to take for both admission and even, and well, funding and even admission?
Hmm. Um, so I think the first thing I like to tell people is that anything is possible. I like to tell people all the time that there's really nothing that, um, if you really want something, you have to be willing to go for it and to fight for it. And there's a doggedness that's involved in this grad school process. And I don't think, for some people it's easier. I will put a disclaimer out there. There are some people that when they tell you their stories, you're going to be shocked, like, you didn't even do any work. But again, I like to tell people that the work, they have already done the work. They had done the work
Hmm.
somewhere, whether it was through the good grades that they were having or the profile that they were building, in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they have done the work somewhere. But like I said, I think that's the first thing, that anybody can go to grad school. I like to tell people that anybody can go. The only thing is that there will always be a hierarchy of things, or a hierarchy of opportunities, depending on how well you have prepared yourself. So let's say I'm in my third year in undergrad and I have a dream to, in 3 years, go to grad school. I think the first thing, which is the thing that is most within your control to work on, are your grades. Because whether we like it or not, this grad school, they want students who are doing well, who are excellent, who can show that beyond just writing great essays, that they have proven that they have the track record of academic excellence. So I think that that would be one of the first things. As much as you can, try and just aim well. I think people underestimate the power of academic excellence, because we think that school is a scam, or we think that, oh, people who didn't go to school have made it, which has its own truth. But academic excellence does something for you, that especially when it comes to these things about scholarships and funding. The next thing will be to gather information. As I said, the problem is a lack of information, not knowing where to start, not knowing how to start. So gather information, and you want to go to trusted sources, not people who are looking to exploit you, but people who really truly want to teach you. My rule of, or my principle for applying to grad school is do it yourself. Do it yourself, because when you are in grad school, you will still apply for opportunities. You will, like, it never stops, especially if you're an international student where you come from Nigeria or Ghana to the US, there will always be one opportunity or the other, a fellowship program, a scholarship program, a grant. So if you learn how to do it for your grad school applications, you are more likely to know how to do it going forward. So as much as you can, try to do it yourself. So these are just some things in terms of groundwork, right? Let's go into the real deal now. So now you have all of this information and you want to start doing the work. One of the things that helps is definitely time. You don't want to rush the process because you need enough time to research schools. I like to tell people, oh, at Getting, we always used to say something about follow who know road, and for non-Nigerians, it basically means go with the people who know where they're going or people who have gone where you want to be. Follow them, literally, just do what they did. Of course, it's not cut and paste like that, but you get what I mean. It's a thing of who else has done something like this, who else looks like me and has gotten this opportunity that I'm interested in, who else has done it. Find those people, look at their profiles, reach out to them if possible. Use a platform like LinkedIn. That is, I like to tell people that on LinkedIn, you can literally stalk people. If somebody gets the MasterCard scholarship, go to their profile, look at what they did. What did they do when they were in undergrad? What did they do after undergrad? What are they doing now? Those are the things that give you an idea of what people's profiles typically would look like whenever you're applying for grad school. So that's one thing. I think another thing that's important to do is to truly understand what you want and where you are going. And again, you can talk to people, because I will confess that when I was coming to grad school, I thought I knew what I wanted, but it wasn't really what I wanted. And I wish that I had spent more time. And the thing is, I talked to a lot of people, but I think I talked to a lot of people and I didn't really ask the best questions, because I could have asked better questions, right? So I think talk to people and see what are some of the things that they are doing in their own role. How has a graduate degree helped them or not helped them, and so on and so forth. So when you have a better picture of that, it kind of gives you an idea of which way to go. I also think about just all the other things. Remember that all your documents are everything that you're submitting to grad school is important. Don't neglect one for the other. Um, Now, there's sometimes when one will be stronger, some will be stronger than others for whatever reason. So, for example, your CV might be stronger than your transcripts because you've had more experiences than good grades. For some, your grades might be stronger because you've not had a lot of experiences. But either way, make sure that all of the things you're submitting are you prioritize them. Make sure that none of it is neglected, even down to your recommendation letters, right? And then at the end of the day, just shoot your shot, because what is there to lose? Some application money and some time, I know, but honestly, I encourage people to shoot your shot and see what lands.
You have dropped like so many gems just in the span of a few minutes. Like everything is, I don't even know where to start from, but thank you for that.
Of
Like,
course.
of course, prepare, but then like, I especially loved how you emphasized doing it for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because when you go to wherever you want to go to for grad school, be it the US or, any country, you still have to apply for things for yourself. So like it's better you have these skills. These are skills that would be really good for you. But I want to pivot a little bit, just because there's something you said that really resonated with me. You spoke of how, like, when you're coming to grad school, you spoke to people, feel like you didn't really ask the right questions. So now you're like, okay, maybe what I'm doing now is not what I really want to do. And you're thinking of pivoting
Yeah.
in a way. Can you speak to that? And I'm just asking, just because likewise before going to grad school, I like spent so much time. I was asking people, do I want to do like the MBA program? Do I want to do like a traditional master's? Do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? And
Mhm.
now I'm getting my master's degree and I'm like, seems like I'm going back for a second master's. So,
Yeah.
can you speak to that experience, maybe for those who are like also struggling, who are like, I'm getting this degree, I worked hard for it, I seemed really excited when I started, but now that
Yeah.
that feeling is no longer there. How are you navigating such a period in your life?
Sure. So I think just like I said earlier, when I was younger, I wanted to be a doctor, and then I went to do psychology. And so I think that you kind of go to undergrad just assuming that along the way you figure things out. And it's true. It's true. Like if you're an undergrad and you're listening to this, don't feel that excessive pressure to know everything now. But I think it makes a difference. I like to reference people who are like doctors, when you go to school for medicine, as you're going through it, you kind of, in many ways, I feel, maybe I might be wrong, but I feel that in many ways you kind of know that the end result is you're going to be a doctor, right? You might not know where you're going to work, but you know that you're going
Mhm.
to be a doctor. But it's kind of different for some of us who kind of, you do a degree, you like the degree, but you're not even really sure how you want to use it. And people always used to tell me that
Mm.
you could use psychology in any way, which is true, but I think I just wasn't sure of so many things. So here's what happened. So to paint a timeline, I graduated from my undergrad in 2019. I went for my service year. And I finished at the end of 2020. So my service year is basically you have a 1 year contract with the Nigerian government where you're working for them. And I was working with a coaching and counseling firm. So that's where I was doing some psychology stuff over there. And at the end of 2020, so I think towards the end of 2020, that was when I started to think seriously about grad school. And again, because I had my bachelor's in psychology, I just assumed that, I had to do something related to psychology. And I always wanted
Mhm.
to work with children. Even when I said I was going to be a doctor, I always felt like I was going to work with children and all that. So naturally, I just felt that as a psychologist, I was going to go ahead to do something in child psychology, a master's degree and all that. But remember, I didn't even really have the information on the right way to apply. So I was so lost. I didn't even know that it was going to be research based. So many things that I didn't know that first time I tried, which
Mhm.
was towards the end of 2020. So I finished my service year at the end of 2020, and then I was looking for a new thing. So at the beginning of 2021, that was when I started with the fellowship program that I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier. And then I got hired with that company in February. So here I am, just fresh out of 1.5 years fresh out of uni, and I'd done coaching and counseling, but now and some other things that kind of set me up for the next role. But I was here now doing product management, and then I didn't get into grad school that cycle. So sometime in July of 2021, I started to like, okay, I'm going to reapply to grad school again. And this time around, that's when I joined Get In, and I was considering applying to the US and Canada. And then I looked in social work because I felt that I liked what social work was about when I saw it through the lens of, the work that was being done in America, working with children and so on. So
Mhm.
at this time, I still had that interest, even though I had started to develop interest in program management. But
Mhm.
I didn't know you could go to school for stuff like that. Like, I didn't know you could do a bachelor's in psychology and do a master's in education. And I don't even know why I never asked. Like, it's so now when I think about it, I'm just always like, why didn't I even ask? I just assumed that why would I go and do a master's in education? Even though at that time I started to fall in love with education, but I
Mm.
didn't realize that 1 plus 1 did not have to equal 2, So I was just there like, okay, now I'm going to grad school, I'm going to work with children. Meanwhile, here I am working in educational technology, but I was like, yeah, I'm going to work with children. And so I'm busy looking for child psychology programs, social work child programs, and so on and so forth. And so this is about June, July-ish of 2021. So I started sending in my application. By the end of 2021, if I'm being honest, I kind of knew that I wasn't as called or as big anymore on working with children because at this time I'd had 1 full year with my edtech company, right?
Mhm.
But again, it was just one of those things that it just didn't make sense to me at the time that I would have a bachelor's in psychology and then I'll go do a master's in education. And then I didn't really know what I was going to do. You know how you have a job, but you kind of feel like, oh, this is a temporary job. So I didn't really know what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to work with children, but again, everything was so blurry. So that was the end of 2021. And then the beginning of 2022, around like April, I started working with Getting. So this is me again adding another educational job and still telling myself in delusion that I wanted to work with children. And so in August of 2022, I ended up coming to the US to study social work. Um, and I will say that it's been a good journey, a little rough, but I've learned a lot of things in my social work class that I believe have set me up and set me apart, especially when it comes to the place of social impact and understanding and how that relates with education. However, when I look back at it now, it's just one of those things that I wish I'd asked more questions, or I wish I'd taken a little bit more time, maybe an extra year would have exposed to me that my interest was really truly in education and not so much in working with children. And so things have been orchestrated in a way that I think that at the end of the day, everything has worked out, because this time that I have used to get my master's degree, I've also been working, and I've gathered a lot of experience in higher education, working with students of color, working with marginalized students, program development, program design, curriculum development. So at the end of the day, it has all worked out. But I think it's a situation of just taking a longer time to get to my end result or my end goal, when it could have been shorter. I'm assuming, we never
Mm-hmm.
really know. But I think it could
Sure.
have been shorter if I had more information at the beginning.
Agreed, agreed. I'm so glad things like fell,
I know.
into places, into the right places for you. But I like just to pick out a few points, um as you were talking. Oh, okay, let me not lose my train of thought. Um, as you were talking, you said something about like, maybe if you had taken a gap year to figure out, things better. And I just want to recommend that to whoever is listening. I know it's not like the Nigerian thing, like you don't take a gap year on purpose, except like you have to because of
Mhm.
circumstances. Like it's okay to take time to figure out things for yourself. Like,
Yep.
try different things. I love how you were applying yourself to different things. You're like, okay, I'm doing this, it's not working, but I'm not just going to rest on that. I'm still going to keep working, still keep showing up as the best person, at wherever I find myself. And that is like truly what it takes to succeed in grad school. Because like, even if you like the class, if you don't like the class, you have to show up as the best person, the best
Mhm.
version. So I love that. I want us to stop on that note and go into some rapid fire
Okay.
questions. So we'll go into rapid fire mode. These are just questions about you, about your interests, but also related to like the work that you're doing. So my first question, I know you're here studying in the US, so the US is disqualified. But if you could go to any country, any city in the world, where would it be?
I think it will be Singapore, and that's just because I watched Crazy Rich Asians, and it just looks nice. So I don't really have any other reason. It just looks like a beautiful place, so I will go to Singapore.
Okay, that's exciting. That's exciting. You're a grad student, so I want to ask you about like your favorite book. Who is your favorite artist that you listen to at this point in time?
So I'm one of those people, if I'm being honest, who doesn't really have a lot of favorite stuff. Because I'm too indecisive for favorites. But I would say I really like City Alight. So City Alight is they're like a gospel band or group. They're based in Australia, and I think they sing really good songs. So it's my go-to like calm girl. When you need to be calm after a stressful day, I really like to listen to them.
Just curious, do you listen to music when you study, or are you one of those people that you're like, I have to focus, I can't
I
do
think
anything
both
else?
actually.
Okay.
Sometimes because sometimes especially because I have such a busy schedule,
Mhm.
sometimes it can be anxiety inducing. So listening to calm music also helps to like ground me. So I just use that sometimes to ground myself as I work. But there's sometimes when I'm like, look, I need it to be dead silent so I can focus on work. So I think it's both.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. You mentioned, and you said the work that you do, so I'm going to tie it to that. You mentioned like, working and also going to school, and you're also doing really amazing stuff on LinkedIn. I'm going to put your social out there so people can go check you out. You're doing really amazing work on LinkedIn. What are some ways, some systems, some strategies that you've implemented to manage all that you do and still do it well?
Oh my days. Whenever people ask me this question, I always laugh because I have to confess, guys, I'm not the best at handling all of these things. I will do them, but I think that I've been running on low fuel. But most recently, I think some of the things I've been trying to do is I think number one is to say no to things, because I've realized that part of my problem is I want to do too much, and I don't realize that I have an exhaustible amount of time. So just practicing, prioritizing what are some of. So this year, for example, I'm only prioritizing things that I feel like are most in line with the goals I want to achieve, not just future things. I think last
Mhm.
year I was doing a lot of things for future me, but I think this year I'm like, if it's not directly tied to a goal I want to achieve this year, I'm putting it aside. So that has been helpful. Another thing I like to do is that when I get to work, I just kind of use a sticky note and write down all the things, or not all the things, but like 4 or 5 things I feel like I can do within this work
Mhm.
frame. And sometimes what I do is I actually write the time. So let's say I get in at 11. Sometimes it will take you like 10, 20, 15 minutes to kind of settle down, check your email, say hi to your colleague, all of those things. So I would say, for example, record one-on-one with Sheun, and I would say 11:30 to, let's say, 12:50, something like
Mhm.
that. And that kind of helps me look at the time block. And I know that if I'm spending more time, because some things that 20 minutes you should be done. If you're spending 40 minutes on it, most likely you are distracted, or you're, just faffing around, like they say. So I kind of use that, and I found that it's helpful. But if I'm being honest, I'm still figuring out how to balance all of these things that I have. But number one has really been saying no. I like to serve, but at the same time I had to start saying no to things because it was costing me so much burnout. So I'm still figuring it out, guys.
No problem. Those two that you already mentioned, I'm going to still, I mean, of course, very familiar with the saying no one, still trying to implement that one, but like, having those time blocks, I know I've heard a few people say it, so I'm just having to actually start trying it. Because I
Yeah.
know I have a to-do list. I say, okay, this one's important, this one's urgent, but maybe I need to like
Exactly.
assign times to the
Yeah,
different things
that
that I
helps.
do.
That
Mhm.
helps. That
That's
helps
so
for sure,
good.
because that way you can, see how much time you're spending on stuff actually.
Absolutely. So my last question, hopefully it's my last question. Hopefully I don't find something to pick from it. But to someone who at this point in their life is like, I want to go to grad school. They're feeling overwhelmed by just even thinking about it. They don't even know. Actually, that's not my last question. I lied.
But it's okay. You go ahead.
So let's address the person who's feeling overwhelmed right now, just thinking of the
Mm,
process, thinking of, even the financial aspect of it. What
yeah.
would you advise them to do?
Yeah. I think when I think about after my experience working with students, if I'm being honest, one of the things that principles I really got out of my experience working with students is that time and chance is also a factor in these things, because I've seen students who have the best profiles, who are first class students, who have good profiles, and they've gotten rejected from programs that they've been interested in. um, I've seen students who have gotten funding, they've gotten into the program that they want, they get to the visa stage, the applications are rejected, they have to go through another year's cycle. And I've seen students who, honestly, even I was like, I like to believe in people, but I was like, I don't know if I can believe in you. I've seen students like that who is just like, it's hard to believe in you, and they've done it. So
Mm,
I like to think of, I've really, really come to that conclusion that a big part of this process is time and chance. If it's your time, it's gonna happen. So that's one, hold that on one hand, right?
that's so
But
good.
on the other hand, I think that there's a place for adequately, as much as you can, preparing yourself. The rigor of grad school anywhere, but grad school abroad, especially for an international student, is real, is intense. Nobody is here to spoon feed you. They expect you to come with with a problem solving attitude, with a growth mindset, with an attitude to learn and to do what is best for you. And I think that the moment you decide that I want to go to grad school, you need to start
Mhm.
cultivating those behaviors, actions, and attitudes. So, if you're a person who is overwhelmed, number one, it's normal to feel overwhelmed because it's a tough process, especially for students like us from Nigeria, who the way we apply to school is very different from how you apply to school abroad. I like to think of even simple things like certain words. There are certain words that in application processes in the US that we don't use in Nigeria, we're not even aware of. Even navigating things like the websites, navigating, understanding how to reach out, how to ask questions, all of those things are very different. So it's expected that there will be a place where you feel stressed out. But here's how what I like to tell people: give yourself time, right? If you know you want to go, for example, for fall 2026, which is next year, this is a good time to start planning. You should be joining webinars. You should be asking people questions. You should be reading things online and just seeing what are people's experiences. Listen to podcasts like this, watch YouTube videos, see what are people doing, what are their experiences, and start from there, right? So gather as much information as you can with enough time. That will help you understand even before peak season comes. That way, when August of this year rolls around, you would already have your list of schools. You will have your to-do items. You will have the schools that are like, okay, these people are gonna give me application fee waivers. These ones are not going to give me. You will have a to-do list of these are the people I'm reaching out to. This is how to write my essay. This is how to write my CV. You have already gotten a head start on your transcript. If you do all of these things before peak period, it will help to reduce the stress because you are ready. So I think that's one of the biggest things for anyone who is really overwhelmed is preparedness. And I think finally, you have to have the audacity. That's the biggest thing I would just say. You have to have the audacity to say you are willing to fight for yourself. I think that a lot of us expect that because we think we're good students or because we think that we have said please or thank you for your call, please consider my request, that people are going to jump to help you. No, that's not how it works. You have to have the audacity to say, I want this thing and I want to do everything that I can towards achieving this goal. And these are the things that have been helpful for me. Of course, at the same time, I also understand that so many concepts or so many things come into play throughout this process. But I think the biggest thing for me is just have that audacity, prepare yourself, and understand that time and chance time and chance, as the Bible says, happens to us all. So sometimes you will do everything that you can do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything you can do will hit. But have you done everything you can do? Right. So that's what I like to tell my students. You need to do everything you can do. It doesn't mean that it will always work out, but have you done everything you can do? If you know you have done everything you can do, then rest in knowing that your time will come. So that's my
Oh my
overall.
God, that is such a wonderful. Like this should have been my last question. I was just like, I just kicking myself in the butt. I'm like, chill. Like I should have asked this last, but the last question I did want to ask would be, can you just list a few places that, a few maybe websites, a few resources that people who are interested in starting should be aware of?
Okay, my biggest tool for me personally is actually LinkedIn. Um, like I said, I get in. We used to say follow who knows. If you see throughout the year, you will see people say, "I'm excited to announce I just graduated from a master's in this and this and this." That's what I used to do. Just as you
Mm.
see the school, go and Google it. If you see that, so first of all, if you're already following people on LinkedIn through your prepared phase, like I was saying, you're already following people on LinkedIn who are, let's say you want to get a master's in business analytics, and you're following people who are business analysts, data analysts, all of those things. You will see when they start to post those things. I just graduated from a master's in this. I just started a workshop in this, a fellowship in this, a PhD in this. When you see
Mhm.
those opportunities, go and search for them. It's really as simple as that. If you use just LinkedIn, even LinkedIn is enough if you are seriously using it to find all the schools that you need to find. Another thing is just a simple LinkedIn search. You can just put the name of the program, Masters in Analytics. If you check even 20 profiles, you might see 20 different schools. Masters in Business Analytics, USA, and then start from there. So that's one way. That's one platform I typically use. I also like a platform called Profellow. So if is Pro, and then Fellow. Pro
Mhm.
Fellow has a lot of resources as well. Sometimes they would even tell you these are the places or these are the schools that offer funded opportunities. So a very quick search when when I'm trying to find something quickly, I like to use Pro Fellow because it's really quick and you almost always find something. There are so many other sites, and I know there's like US News, there's like Times and all of those things. But honestly, for me, my biggest one is LinkedIn because when you use LinkedIn, you can see people's progression. You can see that, oh, they went to University of Ibadan just like me. Oh, they had a
Mhm.
second class upper just like me, And that way it just gives you that mindset of this is possible for me to, oh, this person has 2 years of experience. Oh, I have five. So you already know that, oh, your profile is equally comparable to theirs and so on
Mhm.
and so forth. You can always also check YouTube. There are lots of people who post all of these resources, five schools that are offering blah blah blah. Just follow. And then finally will be just social media, Instagram and all of this. Again, if you follow a platform or a page like Get In Edu, they are always posting things about new opportunities, new resources. So you can follow all those people. But there's a thing in following. Following is one thing. Do your own research. As I said, if you see that Z went to the University of Derby, she graduated with a master's in this. You go and check for that master's. Okay, how did Z fund her? Oh, she was a graduate
Mhm.
assistant. Look, you Google it too. Oh, she got the Mastercard scholarship. Google it. Oh, she
Mhm.
got the Taiwan scholarship. Oh, I've never heard of the Taiwan scholarship. Google it. So just kind of follow. Of course there's a place where everybody's pathway can never be the same, but it
Mhm.
gives you an idea of what is possible. And honestly, that is what I do. And so right now, even for me, I see anytime I see someone graduated from a master's in social work, I always like to look at their profile. Not because I intend to do clinical social work, but I always like to see, oh, what else are they doing? And sometimes I find people who surprise me. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know, I never thought that you could use social work in this kind of setting, and so on and so forth. So that would be my big advice.
Absolutely. That is so good. Even for anything that you want to do, if you can find people who have done it before, like you said,
Yeah.
who know it.
Hmm.
That is such a really good note to end, Faye. Thank you so much. Like these are gems. I'm like, I should have had this conversation with you before I entered grad school. Thank you so much for this. Truly,
Of
truly
course.
appreciate it.
I would like to wrap up with something, and
Mhm.
I think I I like to be real. I tell people all the time. I'm one of those people who I like to say this is how I feel about something, or that something is difficult even though I wanted it. So grad school is can be a rough experience, right? It can be beautiful, but it can be a rough experience, and that's okay. It's okay for things to be tough, it's okay for things to be rough. But my single biggest takeaway from grad school is you have to have the audacity. And I know I already mentioned it, but I want to reiterate it for anyone who is listening and is having that crippling imposter syndrome. You better get up and do it, because nobody is going to do it for you. And people are not going to say, "Oh, she's afraid, so we pity her." Nobody does that, especially if you are in the Western world where there's a fight for opportunities. Nobody is going to say, "We're going to pity you just because." People expect you to be up and doing. So if you are done with school already, the question is, what can you do? If you have a question like, I really don't know where to go, I don't know what to do, you can volunteer. You don't even need to be in paid roles for you to get experience. You can start your own project. I remember I have a friend, I always like to tell a story about her. When she wanted to go to grad school, she was looking to go into a very specific field or a very specific niche, and she realized that she didn't really have a lot of experience in it. I'm telling you, this girl and her friend, they went to organize a 2-day event in one of the she was going for a master's in sustainability. So they organized by with their own money, with their own funds. They went and they organized an event, and that event was what she talked about in her essay. That doing through the process of trying to, I think it was something in like cleaning up the slums and how,
Mhm.
educating people about making sure that things are clean and so on and so forth. And it was what she wrote in her essay. So don't sit down and fold your arms and say there's nothing for me. People are doing things for themselves, and you also have to stand up and do the same. If you are in undergrad, this is your season of planting. I feel that I can't overemphasize it enough. Join clubs in your school, join communities, volunteer for all of the random things that are going on, a 2 day conference, a 3 day fellowship, a this and this and this. The more you are immersed in those spaces and with those kinds of people, the more you will have clarity on what you want to do, where you're going. And these are all the receipts that will build up for whenever you are ready to apply to grad school. I think that there's a science behind applying to grad school, but at the same time, everybody is unique and everybody brings their own unique stories. One last thing will be, you could have a great story, but if you don't know how to tell it, nobody's going to buy what you're selling. That's just it. If you could have the best story ever, but if you don't know how to sell it, or if you don't know how to tell it, nobody's going to buy what you are selling. So you better go and learn how to tell and bring your stories together. Again, there are so many resources, endless resources on all of these things. I personally just completed a workshop, which I'll be doing again in May. And through that workshop, I can definitely share resources whenever the time comes if you connect with me on LinkedIn. But my point is that there's a place for you to be able to tell your story, to say, hey, this is a combination of who I am, and this is why you should choose me over another candidate. So, um, finally, rejection, rejection and failures is part of the process. Even with all the experience I have, I still get rejections. And sometimes I suffer from shame for it, but I refuse to feel shame about rejections because it is absolutely part of the process. In Nigeria, they will say national cake, breakfast, everybody will collect because yes, all of us will taste some form of rejection throughout this process. But guess what? All hope is not lost. Your no today can transform to a yes tomorrow. So keep at it and keep fighting for yourself. And remember, proceed with audacity. If you want something, you better go for it. And even if nobody else believes in you, you better do it. Because yes, it's good to have people believing in you, but I have come to realize in my own life that the people who are doing the greatest things are the people who have audacity in spite of what the world says or what people say. So go forth, guys. Go forth and make magic happen. Do what you got to do. I am rooting for you, and I'm sure there's at least one person in your life who believes in you. So that's my final note. No more advice. I
Oh my God, we could go on and on. And you literally
know.
had me like emotional, like get it together. Okay, okay. Oh my God. Thank you so much for that. Like,
Thank you for having me.
guys, that was not planned at all. That was very spontaneous. Like she just spoke from the heart. And I'm
Yeah,
sure it will touch the hearts of whoever is listening because I'll just end on that note. You guys go follow her on LinkedIn, go connect with her because she's going to make magic happen. So
I will.
just
I
watch.
will.
Just
Yeah.
watch. I'm
Thank
so
you so
glad I
much.
get to be a part of your journey. Thank you
Of
so
course.
much for
And thank you
coming
for
on
connecting
today.
with me. And this was great. Let's do this again soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes,
All right.
there's a lot that you're cooking, so we're going to have
Yes,
have
yes,
another
yes.
session soon. Alrighty.